everyone. On behalf of the Wednesdays for Water, an initiative of the W4W Foundation, a think tank built as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session. Wednesdays for Water is a water conversation series towards understanding better the nuances of water conversation and management. The objective is to engage with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth to learn their thoughts and ideas about complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions. We have expanded to have more activities like the Friday Waters and the Monday Munching with Women for Water, besides organizing water workshops, water walk and talks, seminars, special courses and conference panels to continue the water conversation in various possible ways. Please visit our website, www.w4w.in for more details. Today, we will discuss the topic of water scarcity. I mean, it's not a new subject to really discuss, but we let it discuss, at least for the sake of understanding how different geographies look at water scarcity. Importantly, as we see, water is perceived, studied, and conveyed across disciplines, sectors, and regions in a very different way. Our speakers today to discuss the matter are David Zetland and Lubna Sarwath, both of them professor, doctors, and also well known in their field of work. They are accompanied by a young discussant, Kalpana Patel, and who is also my student from Teresas. Before the speakers take us through their perception in the world beyond water scarcity, let me just share my experience of living in the East as well as in the West, particularly in the West, Rotterdam and Phoenix, and in the East, Ahmedabad and Kyoto, where climate-induced water scarcity not only transcends droughts and floods to the water conflicts of ownership, access, equity, sanitation, gender, and more, including interstate and international transboundary issues. Keeping it simple, if I recall from the way water scarcity is looked at in Netherlands, and David is going to share his experience both from Netherlands as well as US and Canada. I mean, I think the discussion is completely different than the way we discuss here in Ahmedabad or in other parts of the country here. I mean, because we have extra layers of social ecological situations which are completely different than the Western experience. At the same time, if I look at other Oriental experience like China and Japan, they also have very different experience than what I actually experienced in India and in other places. Anyway, we need to hear more from our speakers. So let me now turn to David first, and before he takes his speech on, I will just quickly introduce David. He's a university lecturer at Leiden University College, the Netherlands, where he convenes the governance, economics, and development major and teaches on commons, economics, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. Interestingly, he has actually written a book on water scarcity, which is very interesting. I'm going to share that book link with you in the chat box. He received his PhD in agricultural and resource economics from University of California and held positions in Canada, Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, and US before he actually came to Netherlands. We also share Netherlands experience with each other. He's written extensively in articles as well as chapters and popular pieces for common access to people. And he's actually written some interesting books on living with water scarcity, the end of abundance, the best of agronomics, the little book of the commons. And he reaches public via his one-handed economist blog, which is very interesting to read, let me tell you that, and his podcast, Zeit Talking. So welcome, David. And you heard me very briefly about my cross-regional experience. So please enlighten us through your cross-regional experience across the continents. And welcome, David, once again.
Okay, unmute. Now you hear me okay?
Yes, okay. You are up.
Yes, it's always technicalities. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for attending this session. Yes, I have worked in several different countries. I've also traveled to over 100 countries. I've kept my eye out for water issues everywhere. They are fascinating everywhere and very much dependent on local people and local conditions. I just want to say a few remarks about water scarcity, the kinds of things that I think about in terms of water scarcity, so that we can have a conversation as this session progresses. First, I'm going to start off with the title of my first book, The End of Abundance, and why I chose that title is that for for most of human history, we have taken abundant water as a given. We have, there was a lot of water, it was clean, it was underground, it was convenient to the farmer, it was in a river, it was good for the ecosystem, there was plenty of water. And since basically the 20th century, due to industrialization and consumption, we have, and in a way to population, but not so much, we have expanded our use of water in terms of intaking water, and we have also lowered the quality of water in terms of the discharges of wastewater and also, of course, water pollution. And the end of abundance means that we need to start thinking about water differently because it's no longer as abundant as anybody can have as much as they want. We have to figure out ways to manage that water. Now, there's two ways to manage water fundamentally. One of them is economic, using prices and property rights and markets. But a far larger component of water must be managed outside of markets and without prices. It has to be managed through a political process or through a community-driven process so that everybody is agreeing how to manage the water that they share. Shared water, most importantly these days, is environmental water, but there's also an element of shared water in communities where people might need water for drinking, and especially if these communities are poor, they need to find ways to work together, for example, to dig a well and maintain a well so that everybody can use the water from the community well. And all of those processes are going to depend on local conditions, and the local community has to have the power to control and manage its water. That's not always true. Political control is not always in the correct location to manage water correctly. And then we see a lot of problems. The most common problem is that rich or powerful groups will take water away from poorer and weaker groups. So the end of abundance means we need to change how we deal with these water issues, and we need to treat water as a scarce resource. There is a really nice paper that I have read by a guy named Chris Perry, Perry, and I'll give a link to Mansee about this paper, called The A, B, C, D, E, and F of Water Management. And this paper is really nice, gives a nice overview of how to manage water by accounting for how much water there is. That's the A. Bargaining over who gets the water. That's the B, and so on. I'm not going to elaborate. The point is that water is a multi-jurisdictional good. It is a multidisciplinary good, and we cannot say that only economists or only engineers or only politicians should be managing water. It's a collective effort. Now, I'm just going to put some more emphasis on the losers of water scarcity. As our demand for water exceeds its supply, and I mean clean, useful water, the losers are going to be the poor. The poor cannot afford to drill a deeper well. The poor cannot afford to buy bottled water, let alone a tanker of water. The poor are often going to get drinking water from dirtier sources because those are free sources. And unless you do something about that from a political or community perspective, the poor are going to suffer. And that's bad for society. We all live with each other, and there's 8 billion people, I think, officially now on the planet, and we need to work together to manage the water that we have and make sure that everybody gets enough so that there's drinking water instead of swimming pools full of water. One thing that I'll say here as an interesting footnote is that I wrote a paper about the Dutch drinking water sector. And what I found most surprising when writing this paper is that it took the Dutch, the Netherlands, it took the Dutch 100 years to go from not having drinking water systems to having drinking water systems throughout the country. And when you get a country like India, and you say, we need drinking water for all in 10 years or whatever, and with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals, then you're actually trying to do something faster than even very well organized, very small, 20 million people, and rich countries had a hard time doing. It took 100 years for the Dutch. So we have to be patient, but we have to make progress in terms of bringing drinkable water to everybody. The last thing I'll say is that the ecosystem costs of depleting, or the cost of depleting water from ecosystems, I should say, are extreme. We don't have to worry only about climate change. We also have to worry about biodiversity. We also have to worry about urban cooling and urban tree cover. We have to worry about flooding and filling in canals to put streets on top of the canals, or filling the canals to put housing or more urban development means that flooding is much, much worse, as has been seen recently in recently in many countries. I don't even know how many cities get flooded. There's just an ongoing list of cities getting flooded because they have removed their flood controls. But I know in India, there's a very old history of managing water with canals and tanks and reservoirs. And a lot of that infrastructure has been replaced, unfortunately, and forgotten, unfortunately, which is bad for the people today. So the ecosystems that are suffering under a shortage of water because people are taking that water and using it for agriculture, or they're taking that water and they're using that for industry, or they're polluting that water, those ecosystems are in trouble in terms of the biodiversity that is in those ecosystems, but also in terms of what are called the regulating services of ecosystems, such as keeping the air cooler, cleaning the water so that it's drinkable, preventing floods, and so on. So I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to say that as my last comment, that climate change is making everything worse in terms of bigger rainfall. We saw this in Pakistan with the floods last month, unbelievable floods that put, I don't even know, a large percentage of the country underwater. There's flooding that is worse. There are droughts that are worse. There are heat waves that are worse. There are storms, etc. The glaciers, of course, are melting in the Himalaya. So we really need to get our act together. We have to do a better job managing water as climate change makes everything worse.
Thank you, David. Thanks a lot, because you made a very striking point for me to even ponder about. If that took 100 years for 20 million people, we have cities, even one city is 20 million, like Mumbai and Delhi. And if we are aiming for that kind of scale, it will be naive on our part. Having said that, you also mentioned that patience and progress is extremely crucial. So thank you so much. We come back with more discussion because we have good participants as well as a good discussion today. And let me move on to Lubna to get us a fresh, outlook from the ground and what you were talking in the larger scale. And before I invite Lubna to give her short speech, let me just introduce her. First of all, she's a close friend of mine. And then she's also part of our Women's Chamber of Commerce Water Resource Council, Weekly Water Resource Council, as a state representative from Hyderabad. So Lubna is a well-known economist and social political environmental activist, and she's founder director of Center for Wellbeing Economics in Hyderabad and founder general secretary for Shausa Foundation, Hyderabad. Formerly convener for the Save Our Urban Lakes, and by the way, this was the first urban lake movement in the country, which she was spearheading with few more very good activists who are our common friends. So they were involved, and she was particularly very active between 2013 and 18, and now there are more and more people doing that. She's visiting lecturer at Trishakti University in Jakarta, Indonesia. She also served on the editorial board of International Refuge Journal, International Journal of Ethics and Systems. So environmental ethics has always been her, passion as well as strength as well. So she has also worked on Emerald Publications, and she has approached various other, grassroots activities, and she has been the voice of poor for a long time now. So Lubna, you heard David, he was short, and he really gave a very, very crisp perspective of how the Netherlands did it and how India will do it in future. So over to you, because you give us report from the ground. So thank you, Lubna, for taking out time for us. And we are very keen to hear from you. Please share your experience.
Thanks, everybody. A warm welcome here for all of us together. And I would really like to start off with a street perspective. And that street perspective, where it hurts everybody today, is when you have a heavy rain, the governance asks and wants us to stay indoors. See, when there is a heavy and bountiful rain from the nature, we need to learn from it. We need to enjoy it. So gone are those days. Today, when there is an anticipatory heavy rain, or when there is a heavy rain, you are bombarded with various social media and other official communications asking you to stay inside. For what? You're not giving the scientific temperament. You're unable to. You didn't keep your dispensation in such a form that you can tell your people, your citizens, that look, this is the of rain coming down. This is where it is traveling. Come on, enjoy the rain. Sit there, look at the scientific aspect of it. They've gone all these days because the irresponsibility of the governance is as so much. So this is where it hurts me. The children are not being now taught how to enjoy the rain in the scientific perspective, but it's about just become scary and wait for it to stop. That's it. Now, coming down to the main part of it, water scarcity that you're raising, we are actually being given a choice between drought or drown. See, whether it's in urban areas or in the rural areas, you either dry without water or you get drowned in the water. You flow off, your property flow off. That's all we can do, and wait for the nature to adjust, and then we will again come back with some sops for you. This is literally what every citizen across the globe, I'll tell you, is finding themselves in. So starting off, is water scarcity real, or is it the case of non-accessibility or over-accessibility in under various discrepancies within the same jurisdiction of a governance? Is what is my question. Because if you go down to Amartya Sen, who was the Nobel laureate, even he, in his main work for which he actually got that award, the Bengal famine, he pointed out, was not due to because there was no food. It was because the people lacked the accessibility to purchase that food. So these are the points here again, that are we really short of water, or are we really the scarcity of water, or is there inaccessibility of water? So, and I can supplement this with what is exactly happening in the Hyderabad GHMC, our metro jurisdiction. People in the meeting on the water day actually admitted that we are getting more, if 145 liters per person per day is the standard prescribed by the WHO for a decent standard living, then there is within the same jurisdiction of governance, there are colonies who are receiving not even 10 liters per day or 5 liters per day, and in the meeting the other people acknowledge that we are receiving more than 500 liters per person per day. They actually acknowledged it, and the governance is all there for everybody to see. So is the government at least? So this situation is not scary for me. But what scares me and people like me is that the government is not acknowledging and not coming out with an action plan to remove this anomaly. That is scary. Then who will do this if it's not the governance? And that's what I want to point out here. And the point is that very recently, just on November 14th, when there was Children's Day, in the Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad, a small boy, he held a banner and he put it in the social media so that it attracts the minister's eye. And then it did. And what was in the banner was, I'm in Sulaiman Nagar in Hyderabad, and we are waiting for connections of water, connections of municipal water. Since 5 years, we haven't got it till now. So let me tell you the apathy of that. The governance immediately promised the little boy, telling that within 2 weeks, you will get all the pipes laid down, which are worth around 20 crores, but you will get the water. But I'll tell you the irony of this. The Sulaiman Nagar, or the part of Rajendra Nagar where he is actually staying, is on the banks and partly inside the Mir Alam historic water body, which is more than 500 hectares. Can you imagine? And he's asking for water, and he tells it is more than 5 years, and the ministry is so happy to send the water body MD there, and then they come up telling, yes, we're going to lay the pipes. So our challenge is only this, that we reside on the banks of a water body, but when we want water, the water has to come from across pipes. So what sort of a culture is this? What sort of a capital intensive, energy guzzling culture are we talking about? And why aren't people made dependent on the water body in their vicinity? Why? Because the water body is encroached by the minute and by the day, and it is polluted by the minute and by the day. So stopping the encroachment and stopping the pollution, why is it a big deal? These are the points that we have to ponder upon. So these capitalistic and technological interventions are actually an impediment to naturality. So a natural accessible resource is now kept as a dump, much to the detriment of the same population, because even the underground bore will fetch them a wrong water now, because they are in the vicinity of a polluted lake. And then they are being assured, the little boy, that yeah, we are spending 20 crores, yes, we are getting it for you. And this is being applauded now. I don't see anything to be applauded in this. Rather, there should have been an apology, but that didn't come. And quickly, I'm going to the other point, that there was a very big, the economist, Dr. Mahbubul Haq, who was also was very deeply involved with Amartya Sen in the Human Development Index of UNDP. So he actually told that there is a huge disparity between the desperately poor and the embarrassingly rich. Like I pointed to you, 10 liters per day, 5 liters per day, and 500 liters per day. So are we concerned that we remove these disparities is my concern and worry. And look at the water being supplied in spite of any shortages or scarcities to the coke industries, to the beer industry. How many liters of water do you take to produce one glass of beer? It's all open knowledge. And also, what about water that goes to the most heinous industry, which is called the war industry, the war arms and ammunition manufacturing industry? How much of water do they take to destroy the human being, to kill the human being? Where are we going? Morally, ethically, technologically, where are we? Now, the fresh water bodies are under, as I told, on the twin attacks, encroachment and pollution. That lessens, shallows down their holding capacity also. So when it rains, where does it go? It goes and floods everybody. Now, governance is also not willing to look at alternative approaches that we are giving them. Like we said, we need to also stop the generation of sewage itself, because today, what we adopted from the West is nothing but use the washroom, all the human feces, and then you flush it off. That's you allow it to go through water that is either treated or raw water or fresh water. That's all what people are doing. That's urbanization. That's called now science, technology. But we are telling, reduce the generation of the sewage itself, because we visited in Kanchipuram, we went to research, we went there, we saw the Jiddu Krishnamurti school. They are using dry latrines. The school is functioning very well. I use the dry latrine. Not much switches of water. They are not flushing anything. Nowhere there is any pit used. There are so many alternatives, because we need to look into alternatives. We have reached the tipping point in the world. We can't afford to just keep on using water and go by the hackneyed old traditional methods, which are destroying us. So we really appreciate if the entire governance and everybody look into this. And the government of India is also talking about interlinking of rivers. Interlinking of rivers, it seems, from the rivers of abundance to the rivers of scarcity. Which river becomes abundant when? We don't know. Because the river of scarcity, which you are tilling today, is actually flooding somebody tomorrow. So how are you going to determine the scarcity and the abundance? And is this based on a sound scientific and irrigational study? And have you taken the objections of the environmentalists and the scientists at all? So anything has to be very technologically sound. Technology has to be ethical. We can't say technology is ethical neutral at all. Because yesterday's plastic, which was the boon, is the bane today for the whole world. And today, nuclear energy is being treated as clean at the great COP27 and COP26. And our ministers are signing nuclear energy plants on and on. And the reality is that Fukushima nuclear plant is actually dumping its entire nuclear waste into the oceans. Water body as a recourse for nuclear waste, which will kill everything. Looking at the dynamicness of the water, that you dump something here, it will go across. So who is telling that nuclear energy is clean, and how are we silent on that unless we know the entire cycle as to where the waste of nuclear energy will go? Given that Fukushima till now could not identify a place to scientifically dispose of nuclear waste. So what is COP27 really doing? Just fossil fuel, and nuclear energy is treated clean today. Yesterday, plastic was clean. Today, what is plastic? This evil and shaitan upon us. So I would really like to end up by telling that the industries who are actually surviving, their entire raw material is from the nature, from the land, from the water, from everything. But they are polluting the land, polluting the water body, polluting the air. So at what stage, like in Bangladesh, they come up with a very good policy where the banking actually, when giving the loan itself, they're determining what is its carbon footprint and where is it going to dispose its waste and everything. They're calling it a green banking policy. So I think we should be more and more open to such policies. Not even open, it's got to be coming on a war footing. Such the policies and filters which will tell that if you are extracting this much from nature, how are you going to replenish it? Tell us the plan and how it will be monitored and how it is going to be. Why can't we be such? I mean, these are just basic common sense. I'm telling, I'm not speaking as a scientist here at all, because I'm not. So now what I'm telling is that capturing the rain where it falls. If you take any municipal corporation, or any urban body or any jurisdiction, taking the smallest jurisdiction is a municipal corporation, local body. So they are allowing, with increased concretization, all the rainwater, it floods them because there's no connectivity of flow, the disconnectivity of flow, or it is a runoff, it is not being absorbed by the land in that vicinity where the rain is falling. So we want water from across miles using technology and energy. So it should, what is happening especially in places, urban places like ours, is that every water body has an economy around it, just as it has the biodiversity around it. In Hyderabad, for example, and many places across India, what happened was, when each water body is getting polluted, the fishermen's society that each water body has is getting shut down, because the government is telling them, no more licenses for you, because your water body is polluted and you cannot put any fish seedlings over there. We actually interviewed various fishermen societies presidents across the north, west, south of the GHMC, Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, and they all told us. So the livelihood has gone. Now they are working as some laborers or something, or just whiling away or going behind some politicians and doing something. So these are the sad points. And also the socio-economic culture, every bund of almost every lake, for example, in major of our city, at least Hyderabad, we found that the people, the bunds had women who were selling fresh fish from the lake, water bodies, and the people used to come down along with their children on the vehicles, and they would purchase that fish. They would fish for some time, they would purchase the fish, and they would go home. So this was sort of a socio-economic milieu, where the children are knowing what is fishing and interacting with those fishermen and all that. You will feel sad to hear, for the past 6 years, that culture has totally vanished from Hyderabad. Thanks to the concretization and the pollution and the encroachments that are going on inside the water bodies, both by the state and the private. And I'm telling you, this is a situation across India. And I can tell you as a last point, because of my Indonesian experience, every waterway that is there was highly polluted. I have pictures with me, just I clicked when I went there. I was the visiting lecturer. I am no longer there, the visiting lecturer. So it is full of the sewage water that's going across in all the Indonesian waterways. And there are open food courts there, and eating stalls and parking places. Everything is there, either on those canals or just adjacent to those canals, and people are just used to it. Nobody over there also is thinking that what is the solution? Why should my last salvo will be this? Are we really more civilized than before? Are we really more technologically advanced? Because I ask this and I tell this, and I'm telling this to everywhere, to the TIS chairman, the late Parasuraman, and to the Venkaiah Naidu Garu, who was then the Maud minister, and to our own governance here, Telangana governance, everybody, I told only this, that when we travel out, we see our own sticky water going into the water bodies across all the channels. We are just percolating everything. Everything is just conveying across the city. Proliferation, huge proliferation of something that should be handled in the vicinity. And there are many options to handle it within the vicinity, within the jurisdiction, without polluting any channel and any water body. And so that there is no water scarcity, no water shortage for anybody in the world, anybody in India, anybody in Telangana and Hyderabad. It is possible, it is doable, but unfortunately it's not being done. Thank you. And if I've taken some extra time, I'm sorry.
No, Lubna, you were speaking your heart. We were really enjoying your from the ground report, because I know you for so many years, how you have really walked with these people on the ground. So the hats off to you to bring the voices of the people here, because also we need to understand that water scarcity is actually the scarcity for the poor and not really all of us. That's also an important remark I have to make here. But we should move on to our discussion, because that's the interesting part of the session here. So may I now invite Kalpana Patel, a very young discussant, dynamic, enthusiastic, and let me just give a quick introduction of her before I actually ask her to take the session forward with both the speakers who are present here. So Kalpana is actually one of my students from the recent time. She is pursuing her master's in water science and governance at Terry Sass School of Advanced Studies in Delhi. Her interests are in climate finance, international negotiations, water governance, GIS, irrigation and water audit, and demand management. She's involved with WRI in building leadership in climate change management program. She's done multiple projects on water with UNICEF WASH, for example, mobile hand wash station, and appointed a child cabinet to manage it in a government school, which has increased the learning outcome of the school. So in her little age, actually, she has done a lot of work, and I will actually keep her bio in the chat box and instead invite her to really start summarizing the session and at the same time start engaging with both the speakers. So thank you, Kalpana, for taking out time for us, and over to you, and rest of the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mansee, for providing this opportunity to learn so many things. And thank you, David, and thank you, Lubna, for such an insightful conversation, to hear about your experiences sitting at one corner of the world, to have the insight about the other cities, other demography, and how the water situation is in various regions all across the globe. So I would not take too much time, and I have just a few questions for which I think I would want to seek your opinion and understand that how do you both see this. So it was quite an interesting conversation, at least till now. So I'll go ahead with my first question, and my first question is for David. So, David, since you were talking about water scarcity, my question is, I want to understand the role of governance in water scarcity, considering that you are from a different country. So how does the water governance part affects the water scarcity in your region or in your experiences in the cities that you have lived?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Very important question. Unfortunately, it's not an easy answer. Let me say a few things. And I'm going to respond as I speak a little bit to some of the things that Dr. Lubna said, because she made some very good points that I'd like to put some more emphasis on. The first of all is that the governance is fundamental to water, because governance is how you make rules. And because water is owned by the government on behalf of the people in almost every country on the planet, the governance of that water is a political discussion. So we have to take that into account. And when the famine happened in Bengal during World War II, that was mentioned by Dr. Lubna earlier, Amartya Sen did in fact document that this was not a question of calories. It was actually a British government policy that left millions of Bengalis starving. So that was an example of governance not working on behalf of the people that it's supposed to support. Also, when I mentioned earlier that the Dutch took 100 years to bring water to everybody, all citizens, there was a massive subsidy in that process. The poor people were subsidized from the beginning and all the way into the end of that process by the richer people in the country. And that was because a very, very interesting element was the political right to vote was extended from only landowners to almost all males and later females in the country. And when the political vote changed, that meant that the government had to pay attention to some of these citizens. And so that's a question of governance. And the another element of governance that I'll give, and I am only drawing on an article that I read by an academic that was, and I don't know the correct words that are used in India, but as I understand it, the government of India, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, made a law requiring that the local city council or the town council has to be at least 50% female. Now, I don't know all the details, but I do remember that the paper that was published by academics, including people working in India, said that when women had political rights on these town councils, that there was a direct increase in the quality of water supply in these councils, because it turns out that this is a so-called women's job. And when the women had political power, then they were able to get better quality water. So governance in the end is about power. And when it comes to water, we have to try to have, I would call, local solutions to water problems. And if there are local solutions to water problems, then those will be appropriate solutions. Dr. Lubna said that the River Connections Project is a terrible idea. I completely agree. It's an enormous scale that makes almost no sense in terms of ecosystems or in terms of economics. And it also destroying local solutions to water scarcity when with a overall government, ego, a project of ego, I'd have to say, which is almost certainly not going to work. So I can say many more things, but I'll stop there. I think you're still muted.
Thank you so much for that answer. So of course, like as you're talking about the Indian scenario, that yes, of course, the water, anything related to water is considered as a women's duty. Yes, we have seen that, and personally, I have also seen that. So you're very correct about that point. So I have one more question that I would want to seek an answer to and understand that how we can take this up. So when we talk of any issue, there are of course power dynamics that are involved, of course, that varies as per the region. So in the aspect of power dynamics, how can we ensure that the water scarcity doesn't affect the marginalized and the lower income section of the society as badly as it is affecting in the current scenario? And I'm sure we all have spoken about this in this session also. So I would just want to know your perspective on this.
Yeah, it is a political decision. The poor they're poor in money and they're poor in political power. And one of the things that I thought was the most interesting example of how to prioritize the people over the rich, let's say, was a system that they had in Rome over 2,000 years ago. And that system was how they allocated water from the big Roman aqueducts that are very famous. And the water would go from the aqueduct into a distribution tank. And the distribution tank had 3 different outlets: the bottom outlet, the middle outlet, and the top outlet. And if there was not enough water, the water level would drop, of course, and the top outlet would lose its water. The middle outlet would lose its water next, and the third outlet would lose its water last. Now, the top outlet was connected to houses, private houses that paid for water service. So the rich were on the top outlet. They would lose their water first. The second outlet were the bathhouses, and the bathhouses were for the public, but also they used a lot of water, and they would lose their water second. And when the last group that would lose their water would be the public fountains for collecting water for drinking and for use. And this, by definition, was the most people and also the poorest people. So even 2,000 years ago, they had a system to prioritize the poor over the rich when it came to water scarcity. And this is a social decision. This is not something that the poor are going to be able to purchase. They don't have enough money. But if you're going to prioritize your water for the most of the people in society, which is why I talk about that in my book, that you have to set aside social water first, then if you're going to do that, it's a political decision. The one last thing I'll add, which is relevant in India as well, is that when you have farmers, and farmers use a lot of water, they use rainwater and monsoon water, of course, but if they are getting water from the canals or from the groundwater, then the richer farmers tend to have more equipment, stronger pumps, We know about the interesting long-running discussion about energy subsidies to farmers, electricity subsidies to farmers. But as a fact, in India, some of the largest farmers grow crops that are for commodity markets, such as sugar. And the farmers that are growing food for local consumption or self-consumption, those are the poorer farmers, and they are getting pushed away from water supplies. So this is something which is bad for the social security, for the stability of these small communities, and especially for the poor. And so the government should be charging large farmers a higher price or cutting off their access, because those are commercial farmers and they can afford to pay for water. They're selling a crop in the marketplace. They should afford to pay for water. Anyway, I could say more, but that was a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Just adding to the point that you added about the farmers in Indian scenario, of course, what we said is the existing reality. And moreover, these rich farmers who are actually growing the crops for commercial production, they also are happening to be selling the water to the poorer farmers from their own bore wells, because most of the farmers right now in India are also dependent upon the groundwater. So definitely. So I might come back to you again for another question, but going to Lubna. Thank you so much, Lubna. It was really like I heard everything and you were speaking your heart out, as Dr. Mansee already said. I just want to understand, how do you see that capitalism plays a role in the water scarcity?
Yeah, thanks, Kalpana. It's so nice to have a discussion with an youngster like you. So, what I would tell you, the first and foremost connection is the real estate industry. Today, if there is something that is harming the water bodies in most of the urban areas, especially, it is the real estate industry. The building industry has been termed as one of the red category, that is the most pollutant industry as per the MOE of circulars 2, that is the Ministry of Environment and Forests. And you will see them all coming up with permissions to construct right on the banks of the water bodies, right behind on the eye cuts of that. And within months of their coming and setting up something over there, the water body is dried up. So this is the power of capitalism. That yes, right from when they want to purchase the, they want to lure the small farmers in the eye-cut area of the lakes or near the tanks, and then right from being able to get those permissions, and right from being on the good books of the governance due to their maybe their political donations or any other things. So at every stage, it's working out very cool for them. But it's not wrong if somebody is having an industry and they're coming up. But what's wrong is that you are actually extracting, you're thriving by taking a natural resource and you are not replenishing it. Yes. And there is nobody questioning you on that, in spite of there being rules, is my question. Of course, I wouldn't say the rules are foolproof. They are not. But even the existing safeguards are not being safeguarded by the one who are supposed to safeguard them. And our constitution has these wonderful directive principles and also the fundamental duties. That's the beauty of our constitution. Whether it's a 48A, where the states, where the governance is being addressed, or whether it is the 51AG, where the citizens are being addressed, telling that you not only protect and safeguard the environment, but you also improve it. There is a mandate upon the government, not leave alone protecting and safeguarding, you need to improve it, which has become a far cry. But I would say that should be a fundamental concern of the government. So this is the path. The capitalist is like this, and especially the political connection of this is much more. If this may look like I'm digressing, but the fact of the matter is that today, in light of those opaque electoral bonds, the capitalist is able to conveniently donate to the party in the governance without anybody's knowledge, because it's all opaque. Nobody knows which company is donating. And they can have access to any forest, any natural resource, any rock area, any waterbird area. So forest, whether it's forests or these rocks or these open lands or these water bodies, which are all the wonderful natural infrastructure, if you permit me to say, all these natural resources are our ultra super infrastructures. Now, they are not just a cement body or a brick body, which government wants to tell that this is an infrastructure. These are supernatural infrastructures. So when you are being permitted to lay your hands on that, you are actually touching the fundamental thing of human being or any biodiversity which it lives on, and that is water. And government should take them up. They're saying that how are you going to replenish them if you're going to use them?
Agreed. Yes. So I definitely add and agree to the point that was saying that even if there are rules, they are not so foolproof, but there is exploitation even when there are very solid rules which exist. So just one more question to the addition to the same context. I would want to know, since when we talk of water scarcity, since I'm also a water student, so the moment there is talk of water scarcity, there is of course this concept that comes into the picture, that is differentiated accessibility and availability of water. So I would want to know from you, like how and when would you call a region or an area as a water scarce region?
See, as we saw, and we are also talking about shortages and scarcities and accessibilities, I would like to bring here the point of water inequitability. See, the water inequitability actually encompasses all these, because there are 2-3 points here. See, I may have a load full of money to offer any amount of water that I want to keep throwing, but that's not the point. Why do I have that extra access to water, which permits me to go free hand and even throw water on my car and throw water and everywhere? And why is the other person not having the tapped water, not having the pipe connection, and waits for the tanker to come, and waiting for the tanker and pulling the water and having adequate storage containers? And this is, believe me, this is a part of the daily life for crores of people in India. Not just in India, you take Africa, you take Asia, other countries of Asia, this is a fact. And coming down to our own streets of India and Hyderabad, this is a reality. So I would term this as inequitable accessibility of water. And if the governance today wants to popularize themselves or get elected and they're giving free water, hey, free water for you, free water for you, free water for you. So what I'm telling is, in Hyderabad, free water, in Gujarat, in Delhi, where there is free water announced since for the past 5 years. Yesterday's news is that the whole colony has stood up telling that from past 7 days, they have no water at all.
Yes.
It's a middle class colony. It's not a poor colony also. So the point is here is that the inequitability of water should be, if the governance has a sort of a vision or a frame telling that the inequitability should not be there either in economic terms, in financial terms, in natural resources, natural fundamental basic things that are required. If that basic has to be ensured for everybody, like for example, WHO, 140 liters per person per day. Does everybody, if I am the Chief Minister of Telangana, my first concern should be not about the gigantic Kaleshwaram project or the Bhagirath or the Mission Kagare. No. Does every citizen in my Telangana, not even citizen, every person who steps onto my Telangana, does he have the daily access of 140 liters per person per day? Because that day he needs to live standard hygiene. I would be a proud chief minister or a prime minister if my citizen is having the basic standard of hygiene of eating, drinking, and living in shelter. So that should be my concern, which in spite of all these huge, humongous projects, today every citizen in Telangana, every person in Telangana does not have equitable access, period.
Agreed. So just since you quoted Delhi, so you're talking about a place. So currently I'm also in Delhi, and I talk of Vasant Kunj, which is called as one of the most posh places in Delhi. So even here, we will find there are water tankers, which clearly shows that there is a section of society which is not getting enough water. People stand in the queue, wait for the water tankers. There are fights over it. So it is a scenario, and I totally agree with what you have said. So just in the interest of time, I have a common question for David and you. So since I'm also in the field of climate change, and David already spoke about climate change making the entire situation worse, I want to know that since climate change is a reality and we all are witnessing the extreme events of floods and droughts across the globe, what according to you should be done to mitigate the water scarcity? So I would want you, Lubna, to answer this, or and then Doctor, and then David can answer this. So I would want to know both of yours perspective on this.
I think Dr. Lubna is going to go first.
I mean, it's up to yeah, David, you can go first.
Okay, I'll go first.
Please.
Climate change, what an easy question. I think that what climate change is doing is exposing the weaknesses in our systems. And the most obvious example would be infrastructure that is constructed to deal with a certain amount of storage of water, or infrastructure that is to deal with a certain amount of flooding. I want to agree with many of the comments that Dr. Lubna said, especially about replacing natural ecosystems with cement. This is one of those extremely bad ideas that is very important to construction companies that are spending lots and lots of tax money when they're replacing functioning ecosystems, which is a really sad thing. So climate change is challenging the systems that we have constructed over millennia in terms of how much water we should expect. The monsoon is shifting in India and South Asia, which is of course also in Eastern Africa. This is a very big problem because of so many people depending on the monsoon. And then it comes all of a sudden at double the capacity. So that's a really big problem. The other elements of climate change is that, in our cities that are heat islands, the higher temperatures are going to kill people. If you're rich enough, you put on air conditioning. If the grid goes down, then you put on a generator. If you're poor, you don't have a generator, right? So everything is going badly as far as that's concerned. And what should be happening is the city should be trying to restore green and blue places that are naturally cooling and that are also accessible to all citizens, not just the people that have generators and air conditioners. So I think that the last thing, I mean, I could say many things about climate change, but when it comes to things like the saving of groundwater and the collection of rainwater and floods, we should be restoring as many ecosystems as possible because they are the cheapest and the most effective way to control flooding, to store water, to clean water, and they are accessible to more people than water that goes through controlled government projects, let's say, and you have to be a member of the Water Users Association before you can get this water. Well, that typically means the richer and the more powerful people. So climate change is just, it's bad in so many ways. One thing I have to say, even though it's pretty obvious to this audience, is that climate change is being driven mostly by the consumption of fossil fuels, and it's being arriving or manifest through the water cycle, right? The water is the deadly vector, so to speak, because of the atmosphere being so full of energy now that the water cycle is speeding up. And everything that you can imagine from a faster water cycle is pretty much bad for humans because we're not fish. So we're going to have to deal with these consequences.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Lubna, I just expect you to also add your perspective.
Yeah, see, I would like to tell that, I mean, climate change is not a word I have been using, frankly. I use the words climate crisis, climate emergency, and existential threat. For the past some years, I'm using only these three words. Climate change, I change, I don't know, because we have reached a tipping point where, again, it's not just about fossil fuels. I would like all people like us, and I am very perplexed with the COP26 and 27 attitudes, where they are touting the nuclear energy as a clean energy. I think we from Wiki and Water Resource, and I'm appealing to our president also here, and also to scholars like Dr. David, that we must raise voice from multiple platforms and immediately question them now itself, because yesterday they came up with a declaration that nuclear energy is clean. By God, how is it clean when you can't even dispose its waste? Where are you going to dispose nuclear waste? So for me, this climate crisis and this emergency is teaching us only one thing. And that one thing is about not is about not wasting something. You know, if you're using the energy, you can only use it, not waste it. Like our Mahatma Gandhi, who actually told, it applies to the entire world today more than at any time. There is enough for every human's need, but not for anybody's greed. So that applies right now. We have to talk about that. That it's they're not even talking about these things. It's only about climate funding. It's again capitalism over there. So the capitalism is actually dominated there. Nuclear energy, who can invest in nuclear energy? Who can purchase nuclear energy? Please tell me. And nobody is talking about the contribution of war industry right from manufacturing till it is being used, like in Ukraine and other places. Nobody is talking about the amount of environmental damage it is doing to the universe.
Agreed.
So where are all these same topics which we are all concerned with? And I want to make a mention here because I'm one of the fans of Greta Thunberg. But I critiqued her, telling that you never spoke about the environmental impact of Ukraine war on the environment. Why?
Yeah. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Lubna. I think today's discussion has given me a lot of perspective to think. And whenever I'm talking about water, reading about water, I'll definitely have a varied perspective to look upon, think, and then definitely enrich my experience further. So thank you so much for this session. I'll definitely now hand over the session to Dr. Mansee to take this up.
Thanks, Kalpana. And I'm sure both our speakers, David and Lubna, enjoyed the conversation with Kalpana. As I mentioned, our star of the show is always the discussant, because they are supposed to put our speakers in an uncomfortable situation, which as citizens, we are supposed to put our government and our decision makers and politicians and bureaucrats and corporates in uncomfortable questions, which we have to also do. So it's like a rehearsal for all of us, you know. So thank you for the very good session ongoing so far. We are still not done yet. I see some good points made here. So may I invite Dr. Mohammad Iqbal Javid to please pose his question to our speakers, and you may also mention whom do you want to answer, keeping in time in mind, you know. So would you like to ask your question? And maybe I also request our speakers to also take a look at the question by
yes,
Dr.
I have already posted it there on the thing. I'll read it again.
Please do that. We appreciate our participants engage, you know. So
yes, what I have to say here is, if I see my childhood or my youth, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was no commercialization of water in India, except mineral water, which used to be supplied in bottles for 5 rupees or something like that. Nobody used to buy water. How does it become commercialized? So what is it behind it? You know, there used to be always water used to flow in the municipal taps. We used to drink it by putting our hand like this. No, nothing, just like that. In schools and everywhere, safe drinking water. What has made it disappear? The only thing is, the thing which has made it disappear is the commercialization. There was money in that. So they removed it. They made it for sale. It used to be sold only in desert areas like Saudi Arabia and all those places. Where the governments are rich, they were supplying it free. Anyhow, the first question is, how did it become commercialized? Second thing, the commercialization of this drinking water has brought up the plastic in the role. The water is being now supplied. Nobody knows that the water used to be stored in earthenware, used to come in pipes, and there was nobody used to store it. Now it's coming in plastic. It's being sold, and they say that it is RO filtered. You know, all these municipal corporations are supplying it RO filtered, but whether the amount of water which is being sold is much less than it is much more than what is filtered. If you go and find out any RO filter plant, how much do you filter? They will show you 100 liters. So how much they are selling? They are selling 1,000 liters. So is it really RO filter is going on? How safe is RO water? All these things have to be asked. You know, when we ask, it does not go to the ears of the experts or anywhere, because The politicians, they make our sound silent. They silence us, when it comes out. What is the solution for this? These things have to be addressed. Why the municipal corporation lines are lying, public taps are lying dry? These are the questions, to be asked here. So at least drinking water should have come free even now. Is there anybody who can, if government which can claim that they're going to supply safe drinking water everywhere? No. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Javed. It's more of a suggestion and cry, on behalf of many of the citizens of this country. So we will not put it up really as a question, because it's a question for all of us who are here as participants, as well as experts and discussants. We have some young students also joining here. This is something which has been stressed upon by Lubna also, that it's more about capitalization of water, that is what it made more a sellable product. And as also David was mentioning this. Yes, David, go ahead. I was about to come to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I when you said it's up to all of us, I thought, okay, well, we're going to get 1 billion people on this phone call. So those are two or three very important questions that you asked, Dr. Javed.
Thank you.
The commercialization, I think there's a combination of factors going on here. One is the obvious one, which is that the bottled water companies make more money when their people are terrified of the tap water. That, of course, is true. And the bottled water companies use plastic, and there are many fake bottled water companies, so they have dirty water in the bottles. We know that's unfortunately a problem. Why is that true? And you can see this sometimes when they remove public drinking fountains and they replace them with vending machines that sell water, right? So this is a big disaster. This is a social decision, or let's call it more importantly, a political decision. And I think there's something actually behind this, which is unfortunately more troublesome. And that is the amount of money required to run a properly constructed system. Now, back when we were all younger, and also back when we were all poorer, just getting a little bit of water was great. But now people expect to have water come to their house in a pipe. They expect to be able to turn on the pipe whenever they want it, and they get water 24/7. So what we expect from our water system is much more expensive than having a borehole or a well or a public tap. And in that sense, if you want to pay for it, it's a lot more money. But what I understand is the government of India has been very hesitant to either tax the rich people and use that money to build the system, which is the correct way to do it, in my opinion, or to charge existing customers anything close to the cost of delivering the water. So you see water that might be 2 or 3 rupees a cubic meter, when the cost of delivery might be more like 50 rupees a cubic meter. Every water company is not going to ship water that they're going to lose on every cubic meter. So they shut down their system. And of course, they sell that water sometimes to their own selves. They sell it to their own private company to deliver the water on tankers as a private profit. So my overall recommendation is the government has to put the correct amount of money into the system to make it work in urban areas and growing areas. And they have to charge the people that can afford to pay for the water. And in my book, I discuss how to deal with poor people versus rich people. But there's in India, there's a very significant number of people that are very, very happy to pay the equivalent of US $1 per cubic meter, which I think is around 50 or 60 rupees these days. Those are rich people. Poor people, not the same, but the rich people should at least be paying the price of delivery. And right now, the government has a cheap water for everybody. And that's why I put that cartoon in the chat. If it's cheap, if it's free, there's no water at all. So in that sense, the rich people are getting the water, the poor people are getting nothing, and the system is falling apart because the government is not putting enough money into it. And the money comes from taxpayers. The money comes from the rich people.
Absolutely. That's also the argument which rich people make. Thanks, David. In fact, last January 2022, I published an article in a very popular magazine in India, where I actually said that we need more studies done on water extravaganza, which Lubna also raised point, than water scarcity, actually. Because we are not pointing fingers on those who are actually wasting water. We are constantly crying on those who are not getting water, and it's a limited resource. If some people are wasting, it is natural that others are not going to get. Unfortunately, those who are wasting are the ones who are talking about that others should get. That is the ironic part of it, and that's where we all reside. That's called the educated elites. So I will, I see your hand, Dr. Javed, but excuse me, because I will take other people also, because
One
that's
small
the beauty
question
of our
I want
sessions.
to ask. Yes. Can I ask
So
one
maybe
question?
I come back, maybe I come back
Okay.
after our other participants ask the question, because we really want to encourage everybody to participate. So may I invite Muthu Kumar Swami Maganti Jagannath, because you raised some important point when Lubna was talking about it, and please go ahead and elaborate that point. We had a conversation in the private chat, so I requested him to put it in the main chat. So are you listening, Mr. Jagannath? Would you like to ask the question or elaborate? Okay, let me then go till you come back. Abdul Rashid Bhatt, our ex-speaker from the session, it's good to have you here. Please, okay, you have to be unmuted. Sorry, Muthu Kumar, just let me see if I can unmute yourself. No, I cannot unmute you. I don't have that option. You have to unmute yourself. So please try, and let me just come to Abdul Rashid ji. I know you do very good work on ground, so please go ahead and ask your question if you are still around. Yes, you are around. It says host has, okay. I will do that. Please just give me a moment. I will do that. And Abdul Rashid ji, please ask your question or suggestion actually. Would you like to unmute yourself and speak? Okay, I'm not able to unmute you, Mr. Swami, so I don't know how to deal with it. Okay, till
maybe we can read his question, or
yes,
is it?
No, he actually made a one-liner point when Lubna was speaking about like those who have to do are their task, they are actually not doing it. That was the point he was actually making, but I'm unable to really unmute him. So maybe you start your video and try unmuting yourself, and maybe till then, Dr. Javed, you may ask your question, and Mr. Rashid, you may unmute also after Dr. Javed and put your suggestion.
Yes.
Dr.
My
Javed.
question is, this fake claims, different types of water which is being advertised in to the people, copper water, oxygen rich water. Water, can it be made oxygen rich? It can't. Big companies,
We are buying them.
The big shops,
we are fools that we buy them.
No, they are making us fool. What is the Ministry of Information Broadcasting doing? Why do they not ban these advertisements? They say that it's oxy rich, it's copper water. There's so many types of water. Tomorrow there will be water for what do you call spiritual water, some spell water, for getting.
We already have in the country.
It may come. They can manufacture. They can sell Ganga water from here, local places also. The way Zamzam water is being sold. So many things can happen. Water should not be commercialized. The government should ban commercialization of the drinking water at least. They should ban. Water is being imported. Why should we get French water to India? Do we need? Is there any life in the French water? I don't understand. Such things government says is wasting the resources, wasting the energies, and misleading us. Somebody buys water for, French water. Is it necessary? No. The best water is the fresh water which comes to your house from the river or from any source, and which is tapped on the same day. So this is not being done, and people are being misled. So there should be something done. We should go to the courts and tell and see that legislation is brought that this fake water claims should be banned, which is misleading people and wasting the resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Javed. In fact, I teach water governance at multiple institutes, and I do talk about when we say we should go to court, the question comes, who is this we who will go to the court? Who is this we who is going to ask questions? Who is this we?
That's, yeah.
That's those we are we people.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you need the people.
unfortunately, the middle class educated elite is not yet hampered by water scarcity. And that's why we are not walking and questioning the very thing which we should be questioning, because we are very comfortably placed. I can understand those few percentage of elites billionaires and millionaires who really they give damn to all these things. But then it's the large mass of middle class which is really silent about it,
May I?
because it is also enjoying the extravagance. Lubna?
Yeah, one small point. We have been for the past many years telling the government about these water bodies water bodies, how the community can handle it. So we told them that when you are actually telling people that hold on, we are bringing water for you from 100 kilometers from the Kaleshwaram project to Hyderabad, we were telling them that given every water body, every person has a water body in their vicinity within the 1-2 kilometers in Hyderabad, especially because we have even Bangalore, even Chennai, everywhere it is like this.
Even Ahmedabad, by the way.
Even Ahmedabad. You have most of the cities have the river flowing also between in their cities. Like we have Mansee. So we have been repeatedly telling the government is that any water body, demarcate the vicinity for it and make all the people in that vicinity of the water body dependent on that water body for water, telling them that your water is not going to come from anywhere outside. Your water resources this. I'll tell you, I told the government, the people will take care of the water body more precious than the gold in their houses. When they know that water is not going to come from outside, all the rainwater will be stored through rain harvesting and they will dig canals and they will take care, they will not pollute, they will not encroach, they will not allow encroachment. These are all these simple plans which don't have any technology, but they just have application of mind and sincerity of heart and saving and conserving and empowering the people there and actually following the Constitution of India by safeguarding and not only but improving the water body. So we gave this plan also. Like Dr. Javed is telling about the fresh water and all that. Of course, it is possible. We have been telling, but the government, it is about capitalist government. The part of socialism that is there in the preamble of our Constitution is not at all being given any look.
Missing.
It's missing.
We would really like to see a leader like you become the chief minister and prime minister of this country. To be honest, Lubna, from my heart, I'm saying this. I know you for so many years, because the problem
it depends
here
on the
is
water list.
Yes, of course, you're already rising in the water sector,
list is very duplicated and fraudulent in India.
David, last remarks from you. Please, thank you, Lubna.
Daydreaming is dangerous. Wake up and see what is happening. So anybody XYZ can't become chief minister. You have to be.
But that's what is happening today. That's what is happening. But we will have another session on politics of water, because I am getting politicians to talk about it, to be honest. Okay, so I have in my agenda in 2023, where we are inviting politicians from different parties to talk about why water is not in their manifesto always. So David, last line from you.
My suggestion, it should be just before the election. Once the election is over, there's no use of.
See, I don't control election because I don't sit in the election commission. I go with the water conversation. So sorry, I have to stop this discussion here.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And David, last remarks from you before I do the announcement for the next week's session.
Okay, of course. And I fully agree with Dr. Lubna's comment about local water control, local water governance being reliant, so to speak, because that makes people work together, which is very, very important. I want to say something which we haven't talked about very much, but I think it's really an interesting point, and that is the use of recycled wastewater. So basically, when we do have sewerage systems and the water in there is dirty because of shit and pee and all that, people have a very big taboo against getting close to that water again. They think of it as being very dirty. Unfortunately, that water usually ends up in rivers and ecosystems, and then it's drawn back out for drinking water, and people don't think about it because it comes out of a natural river. Now, the thing is that recycled wastewater is much cheaper and much less environmentally harmful than, for example, desalination, which is a very popular solution according to some people. Yeah. And I think that it's important to take into account that recycled wastewater is a useful source of water in many urban areas, especially urban areas that have too many people for the local ecosystem, so they have to be very careful. But that has to be addressed with science and has to be addressed with very careful social discussion, because otherwise people will stay away from it, and then there's no water at all. My last comment is around economics and politics and capitalism and corruption. And I think that capitalists will steal from anybody if they're allowed to. Unfortunately, that's the question is, when are they allowed to? So the politicians, and I'm very glad to hear you're going to do a panel with politicians, the politicians are responsible for controlling the capitalists. If they don't, then they fail at their number one job, which is to keep the society in balance. And so in that sense, and then the capitalists, if they give them the correct directions, the capitalists will deliver the correct answers. So the politicians have to do their job, and they have to work for all of the citizens, not just a small group of special interests. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, a lot of learning from this session. To be honest, I have been also teaching water governance, and I always say there is enough science on water governance. We now need little bit of conscience and lot of common sense to apply all these things, because as Gandhi also said, and Lubna reinstated that statement, which holds true even today, that there is enough water for everybody's need, but there will never be enough for everybody's need. And if we imagine that all poor people also would like to aspire, which they are not, but aspire like the billionaires use water, I think it will be an embarrassing situation. So it's high time that we ask our billionaires that you are wasting water, and that's why many people are in scarcity. So with these lines, I declare closure of this session, because these are wonderful conversations to continue. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, because we are inching towards 100 sessions in our this endeavor to water conversations towards water conservation. And this Friday, we have Friday Waters, and we have Thesis Club to go, and we are talking about sanitation planning in Kerala and in Alappuzha, and we have Paresh Chhajer, who is a PhD candidate, who is going to present his thesis. And you know how Thesis Club happens in our sessions. It's like a jury, and we are sitting and we are really discussing the project and how we can take it further, not only in research, but also in his career. So that's on this Friday, November 18. And then next Wednesday is another interesting session, because we go straight into the ground and we talk about commoning the water. And we have one of the well-known NGO specialists coming from Foundation for Ecological Society, which is also the commons group in the country, and which is also linked to the International Association of the Common Studies. So we will be talking there about an experimental learning tool for better water governance, and that's on 23rd of November, same time, 5 p.m. We are not changing the time. A lot of discussions are going on changing the time, but we will not, because we are already nearing 2 years. If we change time, we lose US participants. So last but not the least, thank you all the participants for keeping these conversations meaningful. As I mentioned, we are inching towards 100 sessions, and it's a really great achievement for all of us, because personally, I have missed only one session, and I really heard it immediately the day after I missed it. So I am reached by nearly 90 sessions so far in my water learning. And I do hope you will join these sessions and really support us and encourage us in joining. There is no fee for joining and nothing. We are just really flowing with our common sense and conscience. We look forward to having you again and again. And we also thank all our speakers so far, and especially David and Lubna for today's wonderful session and learning. And definitely our dear Kalpana for making you all work very hard in this session. Thank you so much. Please take care of yourself, and we see each other soon.